wasn't always like this.
Okay, I'm pretty sure there's an actual story in here somewhere. Believe it or not, it was the whole "be a lady" comments from the peanut gallery which set me off to write this. Originally, I was going to title this book Trash, because after all, that's basically what I became. I had everything, gave it all away, then got it all back, only to lose it all over again. But that's not how it all started. I was born and raised by two normal and loving parents. I have a younger brother, and we all lived in a normal middle-class neighborhood. As a kid, I was one hell of a troublemaker, a genuine little bastard that terrorized the neighbors. Nothing too law-breaking, but to say that I was well-known and the first person the cops would question would be a good start. I was always interested in girls, but perhaps it was for more reasons than I was able to comprehend at such a young age. The first time I kissed one was in the first grade, in the unisex bathroom. I clearly remember bringing two different classmates in there, one right after the other, specifically to kiss, but the first girl chickened out. The second, however, ultimately made the move, leaning towards me for a peck on the lips. Her name was Melissa, and she'd be the target of my boyish attention through till the third grade, until she moved to Florida, where I'd never see nor hear from her again. From that very first kiss, I'd forever after be intrigued by women who didn't refrain from going after what they wanted. Perhaps it's one of the reasons that I'm such an impulsive person today. Then a few years later, I had my first French kiss. My babysitter thought it'd be cute to have me bring this girl I had a crush on a dozen roses, Sabrina, who lived only a short ways down the street. When we got to her house, they were all playing with these garbage pail kid trading cards, and as soon as she saw the flowers, she dropped everything and took me into the closet. I remember us being lip to lip when I suggested, "Let's kiss like they do in the movies." And so we did. Later that year, however, she too moved away, this time to South Carolina. On the rare occasion I still think of both Sabrina and Melissa and wonder what they're up to. You never forget your firsts. Then came the 5th grade, the year things started getting weird. It was my last year in elementary school. I clearly remember my first pube sprouting. It's when I actually began to realize my junk. It had to have been when I was around 10, because that's when things stopped making sense. Sexually speaking, my 5th grade year was chock full of self-discoveries, diddling myself being the most prominent. This was also around the time I started to explore, and I began that journey in the dirty clothes hamper. Don't ask what led me there, because even I don't know, but I found my way there, and for the first time, cross-dressed using my mom's laundry. Surely, something wasn't right, but I wouldn't really know that until twice my age later. I best remember this one dress she had. It was white with these red flowers, and I always used to run and get it the second I knew I was home alone. I could even recall several occasions where I found myself upset after seeing her wear it. It was a really pretty dress, and I kinda wanted it to myself. And despite what I'd often do while wearing it, it also remained a turn-on in a non-sexual way, and that really confused me. My mom always knew that I hated my clothes, but just chalked it up to my being lazy, rather finding myself in sweatpants. Hating blue jeans, as I think she put it. Then I eventually started wearing some of her other garments under my attire, but to school. As the year went on and my confusion grew, I resorted to acting out and getting in trouble. 6th grade was just around the corner, and I was about to enter a new school. There was a lot to handle, so I was pretty much destined for some intense times. The first incident of real trouble I got into was after watching the movie Aliens. There's a scene at the end where Ripley uses a flamethrower on all the eggs. Well, after watching that, I simply had to have one, so into the garage I went, got my water gun, filled it with charcoal fluid, taped a candle to the end, and voila! Flamethrower. I might have actually gotten away with it had my cousins not shot their swimming pool and ignited the water, which then melted the plastic siding. The incident got me sent to my first psychiatrist, Dr. Paul, a man just itching to put me on Ritalin. I remember him well. His bald head had this circular scar going all the way around it, causing me to wonder if the top of his skull had once been removed and sewn back on. I was with him for all of 10 minutes, where he gave me several memory tests and asked me to do a couple long division problems before also quickly declaring me to have ADD. But before he even broke out his prescription pad, I was quick to inform everyone that any pills they tried to change me with would ultimately be sold to the kids at school. Though I didn't quite know what was wrong with me, I was fairly certain it wasn't an attention problem. Then came the 6th through 8th grades. At 13, I lost my virginity to a 19-year-old whom I was seeing without my parents knowing, and on their bed no less. I began shoplifting and stealing anything that wasn't bolted to the floor, and easily spent the better part of my middle school years in-school suspension during the day, and in after-school detention at night. I'd completely stopped learning by the 7th grade, been taken to a plethora of shrinks, and been arrested at least half a dozen times. Any hopes of accomplishing anything from my high school years was now gone, as I'd lost the drive to learn. There was even a point where I took my high school agenda, where at the beginning was a list of all the school's rules and penalties for violating them. I actually took a pen and broke every single one of them, marking them all off as I went along. I think the final step was when I went book bag fishing, as I used to call it. It's when you follow someone in the crowded hallways at school and bounce as they walk while you unzip their backpack and fish out whatever's in the rear compartment, usually the expensive T85 graphing calculators, which I then sell to the local college kids. I like to think that I went far beyond the usual blowing things up with M80s. I shot everything that moved with my dad's BB gun, including my brother. I even made a pea shooter, which I'd later use to shoot out random car windows. I loved knocking people's Christmas lights out in the winter, and my favorite pastime was sneaking into crowded parking lots and switching all the cars' license plates. It might even be safe to say that I was out of control. Beyond that, my final year in high school is kind of blurry. That's when I discovered pot, acid, and ecstasy. I might have calmed down some once I got my license, at least with the getting arrested stuff. But I ultimately needed glasses, so needless to say, my first car was a wreck. Still, I loved having the freedom to drive around, and it was my third car which eventually changed my life. A black 1988 Mazda RX-7 convertible. The car was to become the biggest obsession I'd ever know. And to this day, I still love these cars more than most of the people I've ever dated. As high school neared its end, the cross-dressing continued. I managed to keep it a secret to all but my first fiancée, Heather. With her, I used to openly joke about wanting to be a girl. We were a pretty good couple for our ages, that is, until shitty religion fucked that relationship up. She was Jewish and I was supposed to be Catholic, but that kind of changed for me once I realized how close-minded the establishment was. Would you believe that the church actually kicked me out? Some sense of forgiveness. I had asked if priests were allowed to masturbate, and was basically barred from their cult. Oh, and when my Jewish fiancé once brought me to her grandmother's for Hanukkah, I got yelled at, and I mean reamed out, for washing the meat and cheese plates together in the sink. I can't help but feel that my religious beliefs were destined for a short lifespan. Besides, I'm kind of glad it all happened that way, concerning the church. They wouldn't have accepted me for what I was to become. My departure from organized religion opened so many doors to various other beliefs, which for me turned out to be science, aliens, and paganism. I've always believed in reincarnation, and feel that my most recent life was in the Dark Ages. I'm now a firm believer in inner spirituality, ghosts, telepathy, and psychic abilities. I am a wandering spirit who's died at least 5 times. Basically, my car was to become the focus of all my attention from the time I got it. I devoted myself to that part of me and learned all I could about engines and electronics until I finally thought I'd found my calling. Auto mechanic. I'd even taught myself how to hook up car stereos, change clutches, just name it. I was reading wiring schematics like some people read Stephen King novels. It was the closest I'd ever gotten to finding inner peace. Everything was finally finding its place. Literally. Everything found its place. I became obsessive-compulsive, and in my bedroom, I had all these little glass ornaments and tiny model cars and such, and everything had a specific spot. I couldn't have been more anal if I tried. I was becoming a control freak, because my environment was basically the only thing I actually had any control over. And because so, people used to think it was funny to sneak in my room and face everything the wrong way. I finally managed to graduate high school with flying D- and only 1 year of summer school somewhere in the mix. From there I went to the local vocational school as an adult student for a second diploma, which meant that I finally got to skip all those bullshit filler classes. It was just pure mechanics all day long, and I loved it. And the funny part is, I finished that year at the top of my class, practically an honor student. Well, there was that one minor incident, but hey, they were never able to prove it was me, so why incriminate myself now? At the end of my year at the Votech, I was recruited by this big-time college in Cleveland, Ohio. I was now going for my master's in diesel and auto mechanics. Meanwhile, at the same time I was discovering my new career path, I was also discovering how interesting LSD tripping could be. It was the religion I'd been missing all along, and it opened doors for me that I never even knew existed. I can honestly say that it changed my outlook on the world for the better, and I will always consider LSD to be an experience, not a drug. But enough substance worshipping for now. There will be plenty of time for that in college. Everything leading up to the day I stepped out of my perfect car and onto Ohio's soil had at last given me the sense of comfort that I thought it was the goal in life to have. Unfortunately, however, things held together by repressive glue will eventually always come undone. But hey, in my world, mayhem usually equals loads of fun.